Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Refining Rhetoric. I'm your host, Robert Bortons. Today, I talk to the hosts of Blessings and Motherhood, Ginny and Delise. They are CC moms and they host a podcast that blesses so many people. So I'm excited to hear more about them. Of course, we'll practice the 15 tools of learning and talk a little bit about crypto. So let's get started.
Classical Conversation Studios presents Refining Rhetoric with CEO Robert Bortons, a podcast where faith, business, politics, and classical education meet. Join us as we use the classical tools of rhetoric to seek truth in every arena of life.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Refining Rhetoric. Today I have two special guests on the show, Delise Germond and Ginny Tran, the hosts of the Classical Conversations podcast, Blessing and Motherhood. Delise is a content creator for our marketing department here at CC, and in addition to being a co-host of Blessings and Motherhood, is responsible for much of the behind the scenes for all four podcasts, including Refining Rhetoric. She and her husband, Evan, have one son, Leo, and they live kind of on a farm homestead just north of us. And Ginny is a homeschool mom of four and a CC Foundations tutor. On top of tutoring, homeschooling, and podcasting, she also runs a bakery in Pinehurst, North Carolina, with her husband, David, the chief marketing officer at CC. Delise and Ginny, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Thanks for having us, Robert.
Well, of course, people might be familiar with you on Blessing and Motherhood, and I've already introduced a little bit about you, but can you talk about yourselves a little bit more, how you got connected with CC? And Delise, we'll start with you.
Sure. So I first heard about CC growing up. I was homeschooled. So a lot of my friends did CC and I was pretty aware of it. We grew up in North Carolina. So of course it started around here. And my brother did CC and my mom worked for the company. And I'll be honest, it was a dream of mine to work for this company because I knew I would be able to homeschool my son while working. So it's definitely been cool to be on board for the past few years.
Awesome. And we love your mom, even though she had to leave so you could come.
Yeah, too bad. The trade.
All right. Well, she did a good job raising you, and we're so glad you're on the team. Ginny, tell us a little bit about your connection with CC and your family.
Yeah, well, my husband, David, as you mentioned earlier, is the chief marketing officer for CC, and we knew we always wanted to homeschool, so it was cool that you met David right before we needed a homeschool. So it was a very seamless transition for him working here and then us being able to homeschool through CC. And we have 4 kids, ages 2, 4, 7, and 8, 2 boys and 2 girls. So yeah, 3 of them are in the Foundations program at CC right now. And then our little 2-year-old, he's homeschooled too. He gets all the timeline song and fun things like that at home.
Yeah, it's so fun to see the little kids engage. Whenever I read with, I try to teach Trey to read because him and my wife kind of headbutt on that subject. But then Jonah always wants me to read with him too. So he gets through about 2 letters and that's about it. But I figure maybe I'm going to unlock the key to early reading by starting the alphabet with children at a very young age. So I don't know.
That's how my mom learned.
Yeah.
Well, we talk about defining truth. I'm not going to ask you to define truth today, but what truth do you hope listeners come to in the Blessing and Motherhood podcast?
Yeah, I think we just really want to be an encouragement to moms to let them know, it's true. You're not alone as a mom, whether you feel physically alone while you're at home with your children or alone in the things that you're dealing with as a mom. You're not alone because God is there with you. And that is what we know to be true in Scripture as Christians, that God is always with you, always cares about you. And
Yeah, definitely. And I would add to that we also want them to know that it's okay for them to both celebrate and kind of struggle at the same time. I think sometimes we try to isolate those two things, but our motto is that you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. And that's something we do a lot as moms. So we hope they get that out of the show.
Awesome. And what are some of the ways that you encourage these truths to be evident through the Blessing and Motherhood podcast?
Yeah, we definitely love to ask our guests, whatever we're talking about, whether we're talking about, the mental load of motherhood or just asking about stories, we say, what scripture do you go to when you're struggling with this specific issue? Or what scriptures do you go to celebrate with your family in that, to bring scripture and Jesus into everything?
And then why a podcast? Why not a blog or vlog or some other medium?
Yeah, I feel like podcasts are so special because they can go with you so many places that a vlog can't go. You know, you can't necessarily look at the screen, but you can put your earbuds in, do your laundry, take your kids to soccer practice, whatever you're doing. And I know I personally have found podcasts to be a huge ministry tool in my life. Just the way that people open up about their stories or the different things that they've been through, something that they wouldn't ordinarily tell you over coffee or a question you wouldn't normally ask. You can take a podcast and really go deeper on those things. So I think it's a very cool medium.
Well, as we reflect on blessings in motherhood, you know, Ginny, can you tell us a little bit for maybe people who haven't heard that show, like what is it all about?
Yeah, I think what Delise said earlier, our tagline that we love to use is you can hold tissues and confetti at the same time. So we want to be super encouraging. We want to be able to give practical tips to moms as well and get that in there, but also really just turn their eyes to Jesus to be fixed on him through whatever they're going through in motherhood.
Delise, you know, where did the idea for this podcast come from?
So, you know, I work for Classical Conversations, which basically means I do what I'm told. And one day I was here.
That is not how it works here, everyone.
Well, this time it was not my idea, but I'm happy to do it. And it's been fun. I was here at the office and Ginny's husband, David, who, as we said, is our chief marketing officer, came by my desk and he was like, "Hey, Delise, we're going to do some podcasts and you're going to run them. And this is what they're going to be about." And he ran me through a list of podcasts, but one of them was this podcast for moms. And when he pitched it to me, he just said, you know, we're going to talk about the challenges and the triumphs of motherhood. And you can figure out how you want to say that, but that's what it's about. So it was really fun to just hear that idea. And now to see it coming to fruition has been just a great journey.
Awesome. So how did you two end up becoming the hosts?
Well, as she said, my husband had I guess it was his original idea. I don't know, but I remember being at home even hearing David talk about, we're going to do this podcast. And I think he was talking about yours as well, Robert. And he said, we're going to do this blessings in motherhood one. Oh, you'd be great on it. And I was looking at him like he had two heads. Like, no, I don't think so. Like, I'm okay, really. But he is a great encourager to me. And when he actually really asked me to do that, I was like, if you want me to do that, I am happy. I feel like, you know, it's God's calling. Yes, we prayed about it for a while. And I said, yeah, you know, I do feel the Lord calling me to this in this season of life. And I'm happy to do it. And here I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'll just add to that, you know, we're trying with the podcast to showcase different seasons of motherhood. And of course, I'm right at the beginning of my journey. Yes, I teach my son and I want to homeschool him, but he's one. Ginny has a little bit older children, but we try to make it a point to involve parents who are in really further down the line so that the conversation is a little bit more well-rounded. So we're just holding it down for all the different angles of motherhood.
I love it. I know so many people have been blessed by it. So, you know, how many episodes now? How often are you all releasing? And is there a moment or guest that has really touched your heart so far?
Yeah. So right now we have monthly episodes. We, as you guys are listening, are probably around episode 16. And man, we've had a lot of really sweet conversations. I'll be honest. It's hard to pick one, but one of my favorites was actually an earlier episode with Tara Furman. It's part 1 and part 2. So you want to hear both of them, but Tara has a women's ministry and her heart for women and especially for moms is just so sweet. And she gave so many practical and hilarious tips about just different things that she does to make sure that the balance of her home is where it needs to be, to make sure that she's, you know, putting the Lord at the center of everything and prioritizing her husband and just ways that she meets with the Lord on a regular basis. So that was a really fun episode. What do you think, Ginny?
Yeah, that was a really fun one. I think the one that sticks out in my mind is with Allie Beth Stuckey. And I think you actually had her on your podcast as well, Robert. I read her book before that, You Are Not Enough and That's Okay. And that phrase alone has really stuck with me in the way that she brought it to life with scripture and talking about today's culture and the things that us as mothers are going through, teaching our children, and even the way we speak to ourselves internally is a huge ordeal. We see so many things on social media about, oh yeah, you can do this by yourself. You got this, mom. Like, it's yours. It was a great reminder that, no, you don't have it. You need Jesus. And hey, that's okay. Really fun episode to talk with her about.
Yeah, whenever anyone asks me how I'm doing, I try to say better than I deserve.
That's right. Yeah,
I like that.
I love it.
Because it's true. Delise, you know, maybe give people a behind the scenes look on what it's like to be producing and creating all of these shows for Classical Conversations.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I'm not sure if you guys can tell from the outside looking in, but this is not a one man or one woman show. None of them are. We have a huge team, which is really fun here at Classical Conversations. And we're pulling from our comms department. We're pulling from our graphics department, our social media department. There's so many different people who kind of weigh in on what we do, just in a very granular sense. We've got these weekly meetings where we're constantly looking for new guests and brainstorming what we can do. But it's a huge team effort. And that's been a lot of fun because, of course, if you're trying to make a difference, you need a lot of different voices to speak into it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's so much fun to see homeschoolers and even those who went through Classical Conversations, like Chris Blackburn working on the show. It's just a pleasure to continue to work with all of you all. What are some of the things, maybe some of our listeners are business owners or thinking about starting their own podcast. What are some of the things that you've learned through this process? And maybe Ginny, same thing with you. What are some things that you've seen as a host of a show?
Yeah, this is really a whole new world for me. And I started listening to podcasts, maybe a year or two ago before David actually asked me and loved the idea of being able to take it with you in your headphones, especially as a mom running around trying to, chase 4 kids. So it's been a really, really learning experience for me, trying to have confidence in myself. I think that's one of the things that I've learned the most about in this is that, yes, I can. And again, going back to because Jesus is with me, he's never going to give you anything, or he is going to give you things that you can't handle, but he's going to give you the tools to be able to do it.
And Delise, what are some things like if you are starting a podcast that people can do to make sure they start off on a good foot?
Yeah, I would say there are 2 main things that come to mind. The first thing is know your who. So if you know who you are talking to, like who's your audience, what are their days like, even in that sense, what are the challenges that they're facing, what are some of their needs, then you'll be able to create a product, podcast or otherwise, honestly, that's going to serve them well. So really taking the time to keep revisiting who you are serving. We're serving Classical Conversations moms, first and foremost. We're serving evangelical moms, across the globe. We're so thankful to you guys who are listening from across the globe. And so we try to think of in that sense as well as what we're saying, something that only applies in a Western context, or is it something that applies across the board? So your who. And then also try to solidify your message. So know what is the purpose of the podcast or whatever the business thing that you're trying to create, and get specific with each episode. One thing we were even talking about earlier today is that when we don't have a line at the top of the episode that says we're trying to accomplish this, it's hard to know where we're going. And then on the back end, it's hard to know if you did it.
Yeah.
So when it's time to edit or to say, hey, are we really going to put that episode out? If you don't know your objective and you don't know who you're talking to, you're going to feel really lost as you're trying to wade through those questions. And we have, as we already mentioned, a huge team. They do a lot of great research and a lot of work. And so for you to not know what you're trying to accomplish is really going to undermine that effort. So those are the 2 things I would say.
Yeah. And I would even add to that too. Delise and I, through Blessings in Motherhood, really try to ask our audience, what do you want to hear? We get on our Instagram, our stories, and physically ask them, hey, what are you guys struggling with? What do you want to hear about? What tips do you need as a mom in your season of life? And we take those comments and we read through all of them. We think through them. Oh, who could we have? We're not grandparents yet, or we're not parents to teenagers, but who could we have that's in that season of life that would be really beneficial for these moms to hear about?
That's awesome. My advice is get a good mic.
Yes.
And have a team do all the hard work for you.
It does help. The quality does help for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
The world as we know it is experiencing a lack of new babies. And there's this thing called the 2025 college cliff. And for those who haven't heard about it, back in 2008, when we had the last financial crisis, number of babies born went down tremendously. Since then, it hasn't rebounded. Colleges in 2025, they're expecting 10% less eligible college students than there has been historically just the year before. in fact. So, potentially a lot of colleges are closing down. Eventually those, demographics will come into the workforce. So we'll see significantly less people working. If you have been in our economy lately, you know that there is more work to be done than people willing to do it now. So that's going to continue to be an issue for us. But, Jenny, you have 4 children. I have 3. Delise, you're just starting your family. So with the world's fertility rate on the decline and people pushing childbearing off longer and longer, what are some of your thoughts on why that is in our society? Let's start there.
That's a great question. My mind first goes to how motherhood is being portrayed a lot. People spend so much time on social media right now, whether you realize it or not, whether you're just scrolling through something or reading an article that's online, where you're getting your information from. And I think motherhood is being portrayed as something, it's just too hard. You can't work and be a mother, or even you can't homeschool and be a mother, when in my view, it's not true. Like, if it is something that the Lord's calling you to do, you can do it. Are you going to sacrifice for that? Absolutely. The Lord calls us as Christians. We're not going to live this easy life that it's just going to be given to us. And I think, or what I have seen in social media myself, is people portraying motherhood as just, this is too hard. My kid's acting out again. It's just, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think we need to look at it in more of a joyful lens, see it through the Lord's eyes. That's where my first thoughts go to.
Yeah, I would definitely second what you're saying. I would also say I think that some of it is that we think that childhood or children are going to take away from who or what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And I think about my mom, honestly, when I think about this, and I hadn't really considered it until I got this question, but my mom did such a great job of making sure that I didn't feel like I was keeping her from her work or keeping her from her life. I was not a distraction from her goals. I was part of her dream come true. And that isn't to say that I was my mom's whole world. My mom had a huge, very productive life.
We kept her busy.
Yeah, y'all kept her busy. She's got tons of hobbies. We actually just had her on the podcast for Blessings in Motherhood. So you guys will hear that soon. But it's just to say, I think, what you're saying is true, that we are acting like, number one, we're making our kids our gods. And so that backfires when you do that. But then number 2, if you're only talking about the hard, if you're only talking about the sacrifice, then you're really not doing parenting justice, because it is a lot of fun and it is so rewarding. And even if you're not a parent, you can say that the greatest thing you could do with your life is to give it away, right? So that alone is going to be a great your time.
There's a popular movement now, particularly among people in their 20s and 30s, to not even have children. So why do you feel that is?
Yeah, I think kind of going back to what you said, Delise, people see kids as an inconvenience, or having kids, whether that is, 9 months of pregnancy for the mom. Mm-hmm. And then
my wife informed me it's 10 months now.
That's very true.
Yes, it is 10 months. Little known fact.
Thank you for correcting me on that. And then the sleepless nights with having the newborn, and then all of the decisions that come with parenting. People have been saying, it's just too much. I don't want to go through that.
Sure. And I think when you couple that with, and we did have some fertility challenges in the beginning, with those things that are already factors, it does kind of create mucky soup, if you will, in our culture, and turn the tone of it. But I'll also say that I am proud of my friends and of my peers, and of the fact that we're seeing that this is a thing, and we're beginning to say, like, hey, I'm not trying to negate the challenges, but let's also celebrate. So I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone who's thinking about maybe not having kids at all, intentionally not choosing, not obviously the fertility issues, which are, sad and heartbreaking. But what would you try to share with them about being a mother that would maybe change your mind or get them to rethink their policy stance?
I don't know if I could change their mind, because I wouldn't want anyone to do something they didn't feel called to do as the Lord. I wouldn't want it. And I do know that happens in some cases where you're not really expecting to get pregnant, and you do have a child, but it's definitely something I felt the Lord calling me to. And I feel very blessed that He's given me what He has given me. but I think I would just encourage them to, just see what the heart behind that is, and to really examine that and where the Lord would have them in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with you. I would definitely say never say never. You might feel this way right now, but things could change. And I've worked with kids, I'm only just became a parent, but I've worked with kids for years. I was a teacher, and children are hilarious. They are so much fun. And I'll just tell you guys a little story. So when Leo was like maybe a month and a half or 2 months, I was feeding him. And, I was a worship leader in a past life. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to sing to this baby, and I'm going to just, bless his little life while he's eating. So I'm singing to Leo, and Leo stops what he's doing. He looks at me and he's like, ah! And he put his hands over his ears, this little 1-month baby. As I'm just saying, like, Mom, please hush. Like, I'm trying to do something right now. It was just so funny to me. But like kids do stuff like that all the time. I'm sure you have a million stories of both of your children when they're just so genuine. And I think being around people like that just kind of wakes you up, and it reminds you of how fun life is, or they have this wonder about everything new that they see that you've seen for years. And it's just good for you. It's good for you to be around little children. And so I'm thankful. There's never been so much laughter in my home as the past year and a half. I'm thankful to have one, and I want more, So it's definitely rewarding for sure. But I would say, never say never. Keep your heart open, and to think about, where is this coming from? Because it might not be your calling, but the Lord does a lot of his best work in the context of the family. And it's an honor to be a part of it.
Well, thank you for sharing. And, I want to hear a little bit more about your lives, because both of you've made some exciting and bold decisions with your families. Delise, you and your husband, Evan, just moved out to the country, as I mentioned in the intro, to start a mini farm. We share that passion of growing some of our own food. We'll see who wins this year. You have a little more space than I do. And Ginny, you and David own a couple of bakeries and coffee shops around the area. So Delise, let's start with you. Why did you and Evan decide to move and live on a farm?
Yeah. So when I first met my husband, and literally on our first official date, he was telling me that he had some goals. I feel like this is a normal conversation you have. You're getting to know people. What do you want to do when you grow up? And Evan had a couple of, honestly, I'm going to call them audacious goals. Some of them were just things that I hadn't considered, like having rental properties. One of them was that he wanted to own an NSX before he turned 30. And another one of them was that he wanted to start a truffle farm. And so, I'm just listening, getting to know you. That's cool, whatever. And I didn't know him very well. And so I didn't realize that he was just telling me what my life was going to be like for the next 10 years. And one by one, he did those things. We bought properties and we were landlords. And then right before he turned 30, the right car came up, and what do you know? He has an NSX. And I couldn't believe we were driving to Florida to get this car I'd never heard of, and so this was just kind of the next thing on the list. I like to joke that God likes him, and so he just kind of gives him what he wants. But we had been looking for land for a long time, and finally did find some in the central North Carolina area, and just decided that we wanted to go ahead and start a truffery. And so just yesterday, I was just telling everybody in the office, we got our first order of truffles. We're doing some research on that and stuff. And it's definitely a fun adventure. Our house smells very strongly of truffles at the moment, but I am really excited just to see where that goes. It's always really rewarding, I think, as a spouse, when your spouse has a dream, and for you to be able to see them bring that to fruition, and for the Lord to bless it and to watch them kind of meet those goals. So right now we live in the middle of nowhere, and we're going to see what God does with it.
Well, the rumors are everyone is truffling.
Yeah. Nice.
Look, you guys should do a viral video.
I think we should.
You're a singer. You've got a beautiful voice. You've done some of the CD work for us. You
there
should
we go.
Get little Leo and Evan and get out there in the farm and just kind of remix the everybody's shuffling song and to everyone's truffling.
Follow us on social media.
There you go.
Ginny, tell us more about the bakery.
Yeah, well, David and I own 2 bakeries here in town, and then a coffee shop in Raleigh, which, if you're not from here, it's like an hour away. And the bakery, one of them, Agora Bakery and Cafe, came because I learned how to make macarons back in 2018 and kept making them and kept shoving them down David's throat and saying, eat these. Are they good? Are they yummy? And he would say, yeah, you should sell these. And I said, no, I shouldn't. But I did. I would post about them on Facebook and people would say, hey, can you make this? And I was happy to do it for free. And then people told me like, oh, I'll pay you for these. And I was like, okay, sure. But anyway, so that was there. And then when we were moving here to Southern Pines for David's job here at CC, the Lord laid it out and someone was looking for a bakery in Pinehurst in a spot. And David said, well, my wife bakes, maybe we could start the bakery. And basically here we are almost 2 years later with Agora Bakery and Cafe. And we really loved the idea of opening a space where we could minister to our employees and then also provide a place for the community to have to gather, to build relationships, to have Bible studies if they wanted to just meet up with a friend and catch up. Really just that space where you could come and feel like you can be yourself and then have some good food and good coffee. Mm-hmm. And then the second bakery came along that we just purchased from someone they were selling. And again, we feel like the Lord just used it to help us with the financial part of our business. As Agora was brand new, if any of y'all have started new businesses, you know it can definitely be a struggle, especially starting a food business right after COVID-19 was, it was fun, but a lot of praying went through that. So purchasing the second bakery just really helped us to be able to pay employee salaries and things like that. And our coffee shop in Raleigh is actually, we own it, but it's run by a CC grad. He, right out of finishing CC, didn't want to go to college, he knew he wanted to have a coffee shop. So he went and got the training that he needed. And David was mentoring him in business at the time. And David said, how can we help you do this? How can we help your dream? And so we were just the financial background for that. And it was all Brian's idea and we helped him put it together. And he is doing an amazing job, even opening up September of 2020, which as you guys all know, right in the middle of COVID, opening a coffee shop in downtown Raleigh where, people were not getting out. We didn't know what was going to happen with that, but the Lord has really blessed it. And Brian has done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, you met him. He's definitely a special young man. So both of y'all have made life decisions that most people would kind of be nervous to make. So how did you and your husbands figure out these big ideas together?
Yeah, figure out.
Well,
what a phrase.
Delise, sounded like you're just along for the ride.
Yeah,
but that sounds like a nice car to ride in.
It's a fun car to ride in for sure. Evan, I will say two things with that. Number one, Evan has been very honoring in our relationship to have these wonderful big ideas and to bring them to me and let me weigh in on them, even though you are absolutely correct. They are his ideas. And so we can talk about that in a minute if you want, just what it looks like to be supportive in that process. But it definitely has taken a lot of communication for sure. And then also healthy biblical submission. There's no other way to say it. It's both wives submit to your husbands and husbands submit to your wives, but it's also who's the leader of your home and trusting God with that in the best way, I would say. Once we both weigh in on whatever it is that's going on and that we feel like the Lord wants us to do, in the moments when I'm fearful and I'm thinking, we're about to jump off a cliff here, like what's going on? I have to take that to the Lord and say, God, I trust this man that you've put me with. I am super excited. This sounds like fun if it works. And then number two, I know that you would always catch us. And so I'm going to jump with him and let's see where this goes. And it's been fun. The Lord has always caught us, even when we're like, what, maybe not next time. It's been a great opportunity to grow together for sure.
Yeah, I would second all of that. And as you guys both know, my husband, he has all these ideas and I joke with people.
He has all the ideas.
All the ideas.
And the extra ones.
I think he comes home with a new one every day. And I just have to put this hat on my head like, okay, like, is he 90% there, or is this just a dream? And he's just like dreaming right now. And maybe it's 10% going to happen. And I have learned through a lot of just communication and some of that counseling in there that, it's how to handle David in a way. But also we both just go back to the Lord, and he has an idea. And I flat out ask him, all right, where are you on this? Is this like a 10% dreaming idea, or are we like 90% sure we might do this? And then we both just take it to the Lord in prayer. And that might be a week, and that might be months. And we just have to really trust in the Lord that he's going to lead us to the decision that he has for us in that. But it is difficult. There have been many nights where I, especially because I don't understand the business side of it, have to just take a deep breath and say, all right, like you said, I'm along for this ride, and I'm going to pray for my husband, and I'm going to pray for our family. And I'm going to trust you, Lord, that you've got this, because especially the food industry, it's tough. The employees just feel like they rotate through. We feel like we have the right person there, and then maybe they stay for 2 months, and I'm like, here we are again, trying to hire new employees for, whether it's a line cook or an executive chef, and 2 very different positions, but also 2 very needed positions. And David does a great job at doing his research in that and posting all of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun working with both of you and David. And it's always fun to see how families work it out, because everyone has different personality and different needs. And yeah, communication is key, which is disappointing, because that's Satan's first temptation to man was, did God really say? And ever since then, communication has been less than ideal between human beings. So definitely something that we can all work on, and something that I'm constantly working on in my own house, because I can definitely do a better job of bringing things to my wife. I'm sure she'll listen to this and be saying amen. So tell us a little bit about Ginny, your tutoring. So not doing much else in your life with 4 kids and podcasting and all the other things. So what is it like tutoring, and how have you seen just the students grow in the local program?
Yeah, I absolutely love being a tutor. And no, Robert did not tell me to say that, you guys. I did not tutor my first 2 years being a CC mom. When I was first coming into it, I was new, and I was like, oh no, I can't tutor. I don't know this program well. And then my second year, we knew we were moving halfway. So I didn't want to tutor and then have to have someone else come in. But now looking back at it, and this is my second year tutoring, and I tutor the foundations level, first, second grade-ish ages, is that it has helped me learn so much in tutoring. It's helped my kids learn the information better. They get excited to help me as I prepare to tutor for the next week. I've seen them just grow in how they learn and want to learn. And then when I get to tutor my amazing little class, I really try. I get the little kids, so I get to have fun. I try to bring it to life for them. And it's fun to see their excited faces when we get to sing. Today, we sang the area of a area of a circle, and we have a song we do to do them all. And they're laughing and they're giggling. And they can remember, because I have a song, they remember the area of a rectangle, the square, and the triangle, and now the circle, so they can say it all. And just to see it light up in their faces that they know it, it's just an amazing feeling. And I wish I could go back and tutor that first year that I was a CC mom, because I was so nervous and scared, and I let that fear run me. And now if I could go back and tell other moms that are like, oh, I want to join CC, but I don't want to tutor. Like, I can't handle that. I want to say, yes, you can. And it will help you so much more. Get involved in the program, learn how to classically educate, and even bring you closer to the Lord and your kids in that.
I love that. Well, we're going to end our episode there. You can find out more about Delise and Ginny and join them on their show, Blessings in Motherhood. Can you let them know, where can they find you on Instagram, Facebook, and websites, all those good things?
Yes. So we tried to streamline it for you guys. We are everywhere at Blessings and, so A&D Motherhood. So Instagram, Facebook, we've got a website. We're on all of your social media platforms and all of your different podcast platforms. So we hope you'll check it out.
All right. Thanks for joining. And as always, it's always wonderful working with all these female powerhouses at Classical Conversations.
We're having fun.
All right, now we're going to practice the 15 tools of learning together, looking at the banking crisis going on in the United States. This is part 2 of a series. Of course, since we record this in the past, there might be some new bank failures. We don't know. But what we do know is that if we practice the 15 tools of learning, we can educate ourselves more effectively on what's going on, help us anticipate what's going on in the future, and help us plan today what we need to do based on that information. So, the first tool of learning, we always start with the grammar, and that is naming. And so, something that you need to understand is the Fed balance sheet. So this is from the Federal Reserve. They have 2 goals. One is inflation under 2% and to maximize employment. And one of the ways they do that is by printing money or buying assets or selling assets. And so the federal balance sheet is something that we're going to refer to often as we look at other things that are going on. The M2 money supply is all the types of money that are available in our economy. So in 2020, in March of 2020, before COVID hit, the M2 money supply was around $15.9 trillion. Now in January of 23, so about 3 years later, not even 3 years later, M2 money supply is at $21 trillion. So basically, they've added $5 trillion to the economy through printing and buying assets. Now, this is important to understand that the Fed does not necessarily want to do this. This is called quantitative easing. So over the past year, because inflation has been high, they've tried to lower their balance sheet. So they've actually sold off $1 trillion worth of assets. At the same time, they've been raising the interest rate. By increasing the interest rate, there's less money, easy money in the market. So individuals will be less likely to borrow unless they know they have a way of paying it back and using that money well. When these banks started failing, these 3 banks that have fallen so far, the Fed, in just a matter of weeks, added $400 billion to their balance sheet again. So 52 weeks to get $1 trillion off, 2 weeks basically to add $400 billion back onto it. So you can imagine that fighting inflation by raising interest rates would work, but if you are then using your own money to buy assets, then that is kind of counteracting one another. In the tools of dialectic, the tool of comparison, we would want to look at bank failures in the past versus now. So in 2008, with the start of the last financial crisis, there was 25 bank failures. In 2009, 140, 2010, 157, and 2011, there was 92. So 419 roughly bank failures over that 4-year period. And of course, we think about that 2006 to 2008 is when the economy was really going down, but some of the banking industry didn't feel those effects for a few years down the road. So what have happened in this past cycle? Well, in 2021 and 2022, there was actually 0 bank failures. And in 2020, there were 4, but they were relatively small. So why was that? And that's that Fed balance sheet, that $5 trillion that magically showed up in our economy. In 2023, there have been 3 so far. They are trying to shore up the banks, so that's why they added $400 billion in just a couple of weeks. One of the things that we practice too in the 5 canons of rhetoric is style, which is choosing the best way to present the thoughts. Now, in 2008, there was a $700 billion rescue plan. And you wonder how you got to that number. Vice News did a interesting documentary on it, or they interviewed some of the participants. And basically what happened was they needed as much money as they could get. They met with President Bush and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and leader of the Senate and other key people in the government, and basically said, we need as much money as we can to stop this issue that's going on with inflated housing prices and the banks giving out no money down loans and everything that was going on. And at that time, they knew that they couldn't get $1 trillion, right? We just spent $5 trillion in a matter of 3 years. At that time, $1 trillion was a bridge too far, but they wanted as much money as possible. So effectively, in this meeting, according to the people they interviewed in the documentaries, they said, well, we'd like it to be over $500 billion. Most Americans won't understand the difference between $500 billion and $700 billion. And we think we can get $700 billion through without much of an issue or much of a pushback from the citizens. $1 trillion, we do feel like it'd be too much of a pushback. So let's do $700 billion. And so effectively, that's how they decided in 2008 or so, or prior to 2008, but as we were going through that last crisis, the end of the Bush term, how much money they were going to print and add. And of course, now we've blown through that today. So there's not as many tools available to the Fed because of the balance sheet rising up, because of inflation being crazy, unemployment being low, and everything else going on. But by practicing these 15 tools of learning, we can educate ourselves better about what's going on in the banking system, help protect ourselves, help make better plans, and just inform our neighbors and our church members and community members better about what's going on, because we can be educated about it even if we start with no knowledge because of these tools of learning. So thanks for practicing with me today. And now let's continue our episode. Now I want to tell you guys about our Words Aptly Spoken book club, which is hosted by our founder, Lee Bortons. It's a weekly book club at 7 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays on Facebook or on Zoom. You can find it in many places, leebortons.com. But they talk about classical conversations, exclusive selections from the Copper Lodge Library series, as well as other classics like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and Mere Christianity. Engage in thought-provoking conversations on the power held by words, ideas, and stories with other homeschoolers, parents, and lovers of books. Visit leebortons.com to find a link to join the live Words Aptly Spoken book club. That's leebortons.com. Now back to the show.
Welcome to Classical Crypto with Will. Wow, it's been a wild couple of weeks. If you missed any of the news, today I'll give you a recap of some of the major events and pose a question at the end. But financially, a lot is happening and very quickly. Over the last couple of weeks, we've seen some major banks go insolvent, most notably Silicon Valley Bank. Let's start there. Major questions have been raised about why regulators failed to spot problems and take early action to prevent the fall of Silicon Valley Bank, SVB as people are referring to it, and it collapsed on March 10th. Many of the issues that contributed to this collapse seem obvious in hindsight. Measured by value, about 97% of its deposits were uninsured by the federal government, which made customers more likely to run at the first sign of trouble. Many of the bank's depositors were in the technology sector, which has recently hit tough times due to higher interest rates and everything that's happening with inflation. Silicon Valley Bank also held a lot of long-term debt, and that has also declined in market value as the Fed continues to raise interest rates to fight, again, inflation. As a result, it faced huge losses when it had to sell those securities to raise cash to meet a wave of withdrawals from customers. So customers came in, said, hey, we need to pull money out. They had to sell some securities. It turned out that they were skinny dipping, and boom, it's the bank's insolvent. The Fed has initiated an investigation into what went wrong in the bank's oversight, headed by Michael Barr, the Fed's vice chair for supervision. The inquiry's results are expected to be publicly released by May 1st of this year. Lawmakers are also digging into what went awry, and they have assigned the House Financial Service Committee to have a hearing to discuss recent bank collapses, and that hearing will be made public on March 29th. I don't just want to focus on this collapse. I labeled this episode The Evolution of Money. Let's take a broader look at the industry right now. Next, we have FedNow. This is the first CBDC. We've done a couple episodes on that. So central bank digital currency system that the Federal Reserve is issuing for instant payments in the US. Banks and institutions can onboard as soon as next month. So April 2023, they can onboard and the system should be operational in July of this year. So that's crazy. That's happening fast. People don't know about it. Okay, now Ripple, the XRP Ripple lawsuit. I'm hearing that it could be settled any day now. It's just up to the judge. XRP can bring liquidity to the marketplace. Right now, we're talking about traditional banking and a liquidity crisis. XRP could help with that liquidity. So that's interesting to see. Turn to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is up 53% from January 1st of this year. Down on the macro level, crypto is down, Bitcoin is down, but this year to date, it is up over 50%. That is very interesting. So as traditional stocks, traditional finance is going down, Bitcoin is gaining momentum. So maybe people are starting to see it as more of a viable store of value. I don't know. Anyways, pay attention to money in 2023. I believe money, I'm going to call it dumb money, is painfully evolving right now. It's trying to evolve into smart money. We have smart cars, we have smartphones. It makes sense that money is trying to make that jump. It may be making that jump for the worst. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but all the data is showing that what I'm telling you is accurate. Money is about to be brought online. So pay attention. It might take a recession or a depression to get there. I hope not. I'd researched the 2008 financial crisis to see how you could prepare yourself and position yourself if there is a fallout. How do you protect yourself? I have no idea if that'll happen, but I do know that traditional finance is fairly unstable at the moment. Maybe that's why Bitcoin is up over 50% year to date. I don't know. Anyways, stay informed. Do your own research. I'll update you as things come up in the financial and crypto sector, and you'll hear from me on the next episode. Thanks.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode with Delise and Ginny. If you haven't heard them talk on the Blessings and Motherhood podcast, be sure to tune in. It will definitely lift your spirits and is a lot of fun. So check that out, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Refining Rhetoric with Robert Bortons. Want more? Make sure to subscribe so you won't miss an episode. You can also follow us on social media to continue the conversation, and visit classicalconversations.com/rhetoric to find out how you can join a local homeschool community.